big fat pussy. Is it, what is it? Black fat. At the Black Fat Pussycat. I'm sorry, let me start that all over again.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece for the hit HBO television series Westworld. I am one of your hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me is my singular co-host, Gene Doppelbot Lyons.
Where we go eyes open, together.
And this is our fan email episode where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our feedback on the top listener emails for the week in a little thing we call the Westworld Telegraph. This week's episode was entitled Akane No Mai. You spent an hour listening to Big D and Gene's ideas on Tuesday's Deep Dive. Now it's our turn to hear from you. Speaking of hearing from you, though, we have sponsors lined up, but they really want to know who's listening. So please take 2 minutes to visit survey.libsyn.com/Shat on TV to take a brief survey to help us make a few bucks to keep the lights on and our servers up over on our webpage. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we review 80s and 90s movies. Gene, I feel like this is like my second Telegraph of the season. We're 5 episodes in. This is only my second one. It's just you and I tonight.
Yeah, we're halfway through, and I was just thinking, we've had such a variety of lineups this week with everybody traveling, and you're going to be doing some more traveling coming up. So we had Big D hosting, which everyone thought was adorable. We've had Carrie on the Instacast. I'm taking some time off this weekend, so you two are doing the Instacast later this week. So it's pretty exciting to have the different voices on. I'm so glad that we now have a cast of 4 and can do these flip flops and switches.
Oh, I can't tell you how nice it is to not be so stressed out. And Big D's taking time off to spend time with his family and his lovely wife. So it's just really nice. But I'm doing the Instacast and the deep dive this week, and then I'm gone for 2 weeks. You won't hear me. I'll be traveling Ireland, London, and Leeds, and then Lyon, France for 2 weeks with some friends of ours to go see some soccer matches, some footy overseas. So looking forward to that. But listen, as exciting as that is, we have a whole Telegraph here, and the emails keep pouring in. Our email box floweth over.
Yeah, what's really exciting about episode 5 is episodes 1 through 4, most of the email that came in for the Telegraph was roughly discussing the same 1, 2, 3 topics per episode. So you'd have an episode, we'd see like the control units for the first time, and everybody's talking about what could the control units mean? What could the control units mean? And now, with episode 5, something about it was a very different note from the rest of the series. And people wrote about all kinds of things. So we have a huge variety of telegraphs this week.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's not delay any further. Let's go ahead and open the Westworld Telegraph. Our first telegraph comes in from Mike D. Oh, and by the way, I'm sober. How good is that? That I can actually read these telegraphs. Our first telegraph comes in from Mike D. Mike D writes in, "It seems highly likely that in order to recreate a person, that you would have the ability to make their own decisions when not monitored. You would need to allow that person to choose a course of action that is in line with a person's normal character. For instance, if you only record the persona someone shows other people, then you only get that one side of a decision, and thus the person's true behavior is not shown. However, if you record a person's base urges with no restraint, you get the balance, and then a conscience can develop. The mind then has to make a choice to follow base urges or an alternate path. When it comes to the way that we behave with people in private, base urges are not always something you hide, emoticon winky face. So in summary, if you want to make a decent clone, you need to have the clone be able to develop morality and desire rather than just act in a way to feed someone's perception of you." And again, this comes from Mike D.
So I love this telegraph, Mike D, because we asked before, people have said, if you're trying to clone somebody or make a replicant, and the whole purpose of Westworld is to capture what they're like when no one's watching, when nobody's holding them accountable, it would be a terrible way to go about it, because you would then make a replicant that acted like an insane person that didn't know how to act in public, and nobody would recognize that person's behaviors. They say, wow, Raj is acting really weird today. He just keeps like throwing his shit all around the room, and masturbating furiously. But this makes more sense, because it's like, if you really want to get down to how a person, like they tried to do with James Dale, is how a person would actually behave, you have to get the data from the outside of how they act around people by monitoring them, recording them, watching what they do when people are watching. But then you also need the data of what they do when nobody's watching, and you balance those things against each other. So you have your id, your ego, your super ego, and you make a complete mental landscape of that person.
Yeah, so I mean, you're correct. You left out one thing. I'd be watching reruns of Fixer Upper on HGTV. The Delos daddy bot, though, we see him in the little laboratory, in the little hidden basement, where he is furiously masturbating, and he's on the exercise bike, and he's dancing really crazily. How do you think they knew that was his personality?
Oh, I think that he'd been in a room similarly and being monitored, so they were taking note of all those things, and then that way, again, for him, it's seamless, right? He thinks he's still in a bunker in California.
Got it.
When in fact he isn't. I think that when they started out, that is what they were doing. And at some point he died off.
So if you're stuck in a bunker in some sort of office park where you're overpaying in Southern California, and you were being monitored, would you still pleasure yourself?
I think I could hold out for a couple days, but I did this experiment at summer camp, actually, student council camp. I was like, I can't do it with all these people, in the. I mean, I can do it, but
sure,
but I shouldn't. And that, I mean, I was like 14.
Yeah,
I think that lasted about. I think I made it like maybe 2 or 3 days, and that was
yeah. I was a camp counselor up in Pennsylvania one summer in college. I was 19, and I'm so glad on the second day of camp I hooked up with what would be my camp girlfriend for the rest of the summer, because I wouldn't have been able to last out. Next, Telegraph. By the way, I guess I should say every email that we read on the Telegraph here is on our website, shatontv.com, in their raw and unedited versions. You can go and you can see them and you can comment them on our website. Our next Telegraph comes in from Thomas Finn. Thomas writes in, "Hey guys and gals, the view in the West of pre-Meiji Restoration Japan, basically before 1868, is all about katanas, ninjas, and samurais. This perception was popularized by movies such as Ran, in 1985. It's a Japanese retelling of the King Lear story by the famous Japanese director Kurosawa, and by novels like Shogun by James Carvell and the subsequent 1980s miniseries with Richard Chamberlain. I'm seeing a very disturbing commonality in the settings of all the worlds that we've seen this season. A very Western, imperialist, and anarchic view that aligns with the perceptions of a target market, meaning guests who are mainly rich white Europeans and Americans."
It's a really interesting observation, Thomas, and I agree that the Raj, Shogun world, and Westworld all seem to be catering to this sense of adventure told from a very Eurocentric viewpoint during eras when that would be an acceptable structure, but that is not truly historically accurate. It's kind of molded to the theme park sort of thing for white folks.
Yeah, this is an interesting, because if you think about, all right, so we've identified 3 parks, and I agree here with Thomas. In fact, I think there was one episode where I had a whole bunch of notes on this, and it got cut for time. We never recorded it, but I had this similar viewpoint. Like, is it strange that mainly white, rich people are going to parks that are fetishizing the ability to go out and just kind of do whatever you want, but like be the hero in the eyes of a white imperialist? You almost have to pause and you say, well, what else Are they going, what would the other 3 parks be then? We know in the original movie, there was a medieval world and people are making jokes that, that's what Westeros world is going to be. It's going to be dragons and it's going to be because HBO. And then the other one is Roman world, where it's basically a giant spa. But if they kept along with that same theme, what do you think the other 3 parks might be?
Well, I think you've got, let's see, let's go back a bit. Where else did you people imperialize?
Let's see here.
There's Africa. We haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, we could go to Africa world, sure.
And then there'd be Brazil world, where it would just be a bunch of Nazis in hiding.
That's right. Well, that's
Argentina world. Sorry. Right. Brazil world would just be people speaking Portuguese and Big D in heaven.
It would be Big D hanging out on the beach. That's where Big D would hang out. It would be nothing but carnival and deforestation of Amazon.
You know, it'd be great is Australia world.
Yeah.
Where they just drop you off and it's just mayhem.
That's right. And then
kangaroos.
And then everyone's running around saying, that's not a knife. This is a knife. And trying to give you Fosters. This is what Americans think of Australia. Like, I know that's not what Australia is. What do you think of like an Egypt land? Like back in like the time of the pharaohs.
I was going to say just a place where you go hunting for artifacts. That would be super, super exciting.
Yeah. I just don't want there to be like a Confederate world. You know what I mean? Where all the NASCAR crowd goes to. Listen, you've chosen to follow a sport where grown men and women wear jumpsuits with tons of sponsors on them and drive around in a circle for 6 hours while you get loaded on top of your Winnebago. You're allowed to get made fun of.
I have a ton of respect for stock car drivers, and I've been to races, and I know it takes a tremendous amount of skill and endurance. So I do not stand by Roger's comments.
Thanks for writing in, Thomas. Our next telegraph comes in from Greg S. Greg S. writes in, hello, crew. After this latest episode, I think Maeve's free will is superficial. Last season, we learned that many of her settings were changed by high-level administrators, likely Ford, and Felix told Maeve that all of her actions, including her attempt to leave the park, were scripted. The constant flashbacks and reminders about her daughter are used by Ford to guide her. I think the reason she obtained Ford's God's mode is likely because he has less control in that part of the park and needs her to reach her objective. And wherever she finds her daughter, William will be there. We often heard Ford, through the bots, tell William the game ends where you began, and if you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. I now believe this has to do with William's journey as a Black Hat. In Season 1, he discovered the maze after he killed Maeve's daughter, but that's really where he started the game. We always assumed that it started with Dolores, but in reality, Maeve was the first host to show William that something real was hidden in the park, and both have never really interacted after. It will be an epic confrontation. What do you guys think? Continue the great work, and this comes from Greg S.
So, Greg, it's interesting you point that out. We've always assumed that William's start was either his birth, or when he first entered the park, or when he fell in love with Dolores. And nobody's really talked about the fact that he may have, with Dolores, become disillusioned with the park, where he has that scene where he's sitting her down and, she's naked and he's basically, basically verbally abusing her because she is this thing, and he's no longer in love, and he feels betrayed by this thing that he believed in. And then he sees something in Maeve, and that could be really where he started, where he became the man in black in truth. And if that's the case, then that's a really great pickup.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to talk about, though, outside of the Maeve instance, is her God mode, and the whole conversation about he doesn't think that Maeve's free will is actually anything more than Ford still controlling her. I think of all the hosts, I think Maeve is the one who's truly unlocked herself, because I think she's dialed into the mesh network, and that's why she's able to talk to these robots and hosts all across the park. I think what it actually makes me do, versus question whether or not she's still being controlled by Ford, I think it makes me question what was up with Ford, right? Because we've seen Ford kind of do the same thing that she was doing. How does a human do that? Now, I am not one to subscribe to the theory that Ford was a host, but it doesn't make sense why then they would give a host that same power. I believe Dolores is still on the forward loop, but Maeve is off script and has inherited that god mode. But I really hope they don't make Ford a bot.
I know it's tempting in a world of theories to treat this as a binary decision that somebody either has free will or doesn't. But I think Westworld is a smart enough show to really look at it in a completely different way, which is the question of what is free will. We keep acting like free will is just a technical glitch or a technical programming issue, that once you no longer subscribe to your programming, you have free will. But really, all of us, and here I'm going to get real philosophical on you here, which of us has free will? Like, how much of what we do is free will? I would say that there's a small percentage of what I do on a daily basis that reflects will, and there's a lot of what I do that reflects habit and programming. It's the things that you do every day out of habit where you're not, and there's a large part of your mind devoted to those things that are just on autopilot. When you're driving, when you're eating, when you're walking, when you're showering, that you're just not even thinking about it, why you do things the way you do, and there's programming there.
Yeah. Have you ever been just, you wake up and you find yourself staring at, xvideos.com, with your pants off and you're like, wait, how did I get here? It's just your programming, right?
I'm a Pornhub guy.
Ah, got it. Yeah. I like the more homemade stuff, but, I think the journey back might just be his getting back to his roots of becoming a white hat. What do you think about that?
I mean, it very well could be, but I think that we would be foolish to think that William or the Man in Black and Maeve never interact again in this series. And I do think that is going to be a scene for the ages.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Greg S. Great points, great telegraph. Thanks so much for writing in. Our next telegraph comes in from Coach Marcus, a longtime listener and also a podcast host of his own. Check out his podcast. We'll put the link here in the show notes. He writes in, "Hey, ladies," meaning Carrie, "and gentlemen, this is the first time this show has made me scream out loud twice. First, when Akane dances for the Shogun and they play is just Cream, right? Or CREAM by the Wu-Tang Clan. The original song by the Carmels is called As Long As I've Got You, and the lyrics match the theme of the Akane Sakura story in this episode. But still, props to the music director for the show because they are hitting grand slams. My second scream came from, without question, the most gangsta knife kill I've ever seen on TV. For my money, this rivals the shower chainsaw kill in Scarface. It was brutal and unexpected. Now, I've realized there is no filler on this show. Whenever you think the show is slowing down or just not up to par, on second viewing, you realize they are answering questions that were presented in previous episodes. Westworld has surpassed Lost in its ability to make viewers stop, rewind, rewatch, and repeat. If you sneeze, cough, fart, or take your gaze away from the show for even 1 second, you've missed something. Keep up the good work. Sports analogy, Cary Gross should be a starter, not a backup. Coach Marcus. I love this email, and I love Coach Marcus. What are your thoughts?
I, last season, was reviled for being like, oh, great, it's another music interlude in the show, and I thought it was being overused and too cute. I could not resist this scene. That backbeat for Wu-Tang is one of the hottest hip-hop tracks I've ever heard, and hearing it done in that way, I think we posted it, Carrie maybe posted it on Twitter, where they actually took the Wu-Tang vocals and looped them over, and put them over a loop of this of the Shogun World track. It's tight. So anyway, I love that whole scene.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've come around on this because you said at the beginning of the season, if they keep trying these hokey things, it's going to be a trope and you're not going to like it. But they pull out Wu-Tang Clan Cream in a Shogun World episode that's devoted mostly to that storyline, and I think it really worked. For me, my experience, Westworld just keeps following me. I was in New York City waiting to go see a show. Anyway, the bartender was wearing a Wu-Tang Cream shirt. So Westworld just follows me everywhere I go. Are you experiencing that as well? Do you feel like you're off your loop?
No, I really haven't had it that much in my life. But it's like when you're looking to buy a car, which you haven't done since 1995 or something. But
99.
But when you're looking for, like, if you're like, oh yeah, I really want to buy like a RAV4, and then you start seeing them everywhere, because that's what your mind is set on. So I think once you've got Westworld on the brain, then everything in the world, it's all code.
Coach Marcus, thank you so much for listening and being a part of Shat Nation. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Michael S. Michael S. writes in regards to the role of the Ghost Nation hosts, I had signed up for the Delos emails from HBO Westworld site back in season 1, and in one of the emails that I had just received this week, there is a Delos Corp inner office email thread that is basically a trainer for employees in the park on how to handle guest actions in the park under different circumstances that are occurring. When you click on each scenario, there are 3 options to choose from to correct the situation described. In one of the scenarios, the example is given that if 2 guests are engaged in an escalating fight near the edge of a cliff, and one of the corrective actions that is available to choose from is to dispatch the Ghost Nation hosts to intervene between the guests and cause a distraction to move them into a safe position away from danger of the edge of the cliff, which basically is confirmed that the Ghost Nation hosts are a secondary safety or security force used in the park to protect humans, at least in the Westworld area of the park. And this comes from Michael S.
I'm surprised no one's pointed this out before, and I never saw this, but I admittedly don't read all the Delos emails, but anytime anybody sees anything remotely interesting in them, we get an email about it. So I'm surprised I haven't seen this one, Michael.
I guess it's cool that they're a secondary layer, but let me ask you this. Are they a secondary layer of security still under control by like a Ford, or are they kind of doing their own thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they seem to be following protocol, so I would assume that they're still doing what they're supposed to, but they have designated a leader, which I think is really weird.
Yeah.
The Akcheta character is leading them, and there seems to be, as we mentioned before, an entire religion and philosophy developing among this tribe, which I don't think would be part of core programming.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's almost like a helping hand, like a Jesus character, almost like a savior to them.
I thought you were going to say like Clippy from Microsoft.
That was my second one I was going to compare him to. Thank you so much for writing in. The next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Pat, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, send your hate mail to Roger Roper at shatontv.com. Hi guys, love the podcast, love the show. Just a couple of questions to think about. When the guy had the tablet and reprogrammed Teddy, would it have also been an option for him to reprogram Dolores, meaning turn down her intelligence and aggression? And if he could influence Dolores or any of the other host characteristics, including Maeve's, could he, A, would that work in calming Dolores down and helping the humans win the war against the host? Or B, if you can alter the host characteristics using the tablet, would that mean that none of the hosts, not even Maeve, are truly conscious? What are your thoughts? And again, this comes from Pat in Melbourne, Australia.
First of all, I love that we remember every character. We're like, there was Kissy, there's Akcheta, there's Angela, and then the poor Felix, Sylvester, the guy with the tablet. Like, no one knows that guy's name.
Have they ever named him? I don't think they named him.
No. Yeah, well, I mean, he's got to have a name, though.
Yeah, we need to look at the credits. Listen, if you watch the credits and he's named, write in host at Shat on TV, so that way we can give him a name. Otherwise, we're just going to go based on visual characteristics. Like, I think he's a black technician, right?
Yeah, not to be confused with the Asian technician.
No, that's right. Listen, they keep it very simple so that people like me can identify them and give them names. Let's just what do you want to Alex? Let's call him Alex. Alex the host. Okay. Alex the technician.
Yeah, so what's interesting about Pat's email, though, is I read it and I was like, okay, on its face, I was like, skip. And then I went back and I was like, wait a second, that's a really good point. Like, if this guy's got a tablet that he could just control hosts around him and change their their levels, why is he not using it on Dolores or anybody else?
Yeah.
Like, what's stopping him from doing that? Because Teddy, it's not like Teddy's willingly doing it.
What if, listen, you got these masked, smelly hosts around you calling themselves the fucking Horde. And if you try to do anything to them, they'll kill you. Like, it's, or maybe Alex just has Stockholm syndrome. Maybe he wants to live amongst the host. He's accepted his host overlords, and he's now will do their bidding. Listen, there's all kinds of stories throughout history that point to this type of experience when, prisoners they fall in love with their captors. And that's what I think has happened to Alex. He's in love with Dolores, and he's going to do whatever she wants.
It is just weird that sometimes they have to jack in to do diagnostics on people. Sometimes they don't. There doesn't seem to be a real rule for it. And in this case, again, if you were to say you were standing by me and you had a tablet that can control my aggression or my, intelligence or whatever, and you shifted it, it's not like I would know, especially if it was intelligence. I would be like, huh? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's why I always bring an extra flask of whiskey and a couple of extra Bud Lights when we go to soccer matches. In the event that you start to get crazy, I just pull out the Bud Light and the flask of whiskey and I hand it to you, and it calms you down.
And then I promptly spill it over myself and your girlfriend because I'm real good with whiskey.
Thank you, Pat, from Melbourne, Australia, for writing in. Our next email telegraph comes in from Steve in Northern Virginia. He writes in the Dune series, a major character, Duncan Idaho, played by Richard Jordan in the love-hateable David Lynch Shat movie, is cloned over 1,000 times during the course of something like 1,500 years. The story tells of how the various clone iterations of Idaho attempt to remember the memories of their predecessors through some sci-fi notions of genetic memory. The earlier clones began with the memories of the original Idaho. Then, over time, the memories of later versions of Idaho get added to the mix by the clones' creators. The genetic material carries the memories of all the Idaho clones and are presumably passed on to each successive clone by design. I have to assume that the creators somehow managed to bank all that genetic material before each clone died. Later clones would then undergo some major experience, whether that be trauma or a life event, that would then trigger that prior memories, including how the previous clones died. Many simply go insane from this and are killed or commit suicide. But eventually, the last clone is able to remember all these memories, not go insane, and becomes quasi-prescient. In Westworld, William gives up on the project when he realizes that the Daddy Delos clone cannot handle self-awareness after hitting his cognitive plateau and later on the knowledge of what happened to his family. It looks like the last Delos clone had an Idaho moment and basically went crazy before Bernard and Elsie stumble upon him. I think William gives up on the Delos project because William comes to the conclusion that even if he managed to perfectly reproduce Delos' mind and consciousness, the Delos clone doesn't have Delos' soul, and that's why the clone basically has a mental breakdown after becoming self-aware of that.
So this email speaks to the notion that technology may never be able to replicate a person, that there's some ineffable quality, some other thing, there's a boundary to science there, but also that there is memory stored in the genetics, which is what Dune is trying to show. And if you intentionally do that, you basically imagine if you could live 1,000 lives or 2,000 lives, not remembering all of them, but taking in some innate knowledge from all of them that helps you make better decisions, or as he says, become quasi-prescient.
Have you ever believed in reincarnation?
No.
Have you ever been to a psychic?
Oh yeah.
I've been to a couple of these, and I don't necessarily believe in them. But one time I went, and they told me that in a former life, I was I think it was like a Roman legion. Like they told me a couple of like prior lives that I had lived. Let's say that she was right. Let's say that I truly was, and I'm reincarnated, and I've come back, and I'm living another life. If at one point, all of a sudden, I remember that and that triggers, of course I'm going to go fucking insane. Like, if I remember how I died over and over and over and over again, are you kidding me? This would be nuts. And that's what Maeve and the rest of the woke hosts, I think, are going through.
Edge of Tomorrow.
That's right.
Great movie, by the way. We're really underrated.
Highly underrated. Go out and watch. Go out and watch Edge of Tomorrow. They're making a sequel of it, which is really cool. But
it's just the same movie.
It's just the same movie. It's just like that's the troll. But Steve has opened up a can of worms because now Carrie Gross is actively lobbying people on Twitter and Instagram for them to write in and suggest Dune. I've never seen Dune. I hear it's terrible. I don't get David Lynch. I am protesting that pick if we ever have to do it.
I don't get David Lynch either, but Dune is actually fairly digestible. I think it's pretty good. The book's even better. But yeah, Carrie has been like this wild card presence on the pod where I'm very much about control. And I'm like, we discuss these things in the appropriate forum and we don't discuss the. And so we're talking about Westworld. We've got the card with our notes on what we'd like to say about this particular Telegraph. And then Carrie just drops in the notes, please, let's do Dune in all caps. And then, like an asshole, Big D gives it a thumbs up in the notes, like, yeah, let's do Dune. I'm like, we're talking about Westworld, people.
That's right. By the way, shatthemovies.com. Steve from North Virginia, I think this is a really good email. And yeah, is there going to be one host that gets through all this? And if so, who's that host? For my money, I place a bet on Maeve. I think Maeve is the one who truly remembers everything. I do believe that she's the true conscious one. I do believe that she's going to be the Idaho of this series.
I think it's the Man in Black. Hashtag hot take.
Our next
Not really, though.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from the Big Mur. Big Mur writes in today's MMORPGs, these are massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Is that correct?
Very nice.
Nice. We, of course, have players, but we also have non-player characters. They are broadly enemies, partners, or support characters. When we see Boy Ford, or what do we call him? We're calling him Bobby Bot, right?
Yeah, Bobby Bot.
Bobby Bot. When he introduces Man in Black to the game, it doesn't feel like it's Ford swooping in. It's like entering the game and some NPC offering up a quest. When we see Clementine drag Bernard off to Sector 22, you just might imagine Ford in some form telling her to do it. But in a game, there would just be a rule that at a certain point in the narrative, if Bernard hasn't gotten there, the nearest NPCs make sure it happens. If Bernard is dead, he'll be resurrected. If he can't be resurrected, some other NPC will get Elsie into the lab. If Miss Perfect Hair, Makeup, and Clean Clothes is even Elsie and not even part of Bernard's face blindness, that is. Man in Black can try to avoid Las Mudas, but NPCs will make any other route difficult into impossible and completely fruitless. He's not going through Las Mudas and getting that experience, whether he likes it or not. He can fail the test, of course, but he'll just have to pass a different test to move forward on the quest. These kind of contingent interactions appear in today's games and are not as difficult to create as you might think. There are game engines like the Unreal Engine and Unity that automate a lot of the work. That's today. Even without recent advances in AI and machine learning being incorporated into the tool sets, contingent actions would not be missing from the Westworld game. So, I would submit that whether he is or not, there is no need for Ford to be alive in some forward of the events that we've seen. Perhaps a larger question at this point in the season is, among the main cast, who is a player and who is an NPC in the new narrative? And again, this comes all the way from the Big Mur.
So, Mur, you're right in the sense that I was thinking about this, actually. I just started playing State of Decay 2. I'm on Xbox with the gamer tag Shirtless Lincoln, Linkin, like Linkin Park.
Rest in peace, Chester.
Terrible band. So
love him.
So the NPC idea, though, I really like. And again, it's, people are like, oh, is it Ford? Is it Ford? Well, he wrote this whole thing, right? The code is his. And so therefore you would say that parts of his aspect, you could see that he was a showman. Like, he didn't do things subtle. And so there's parts of him in all these NPCs. But if I had to guess, I would say obviously Bobby Bot, definitely an NPC. Lawrence's kid, definitely an NPC. I'd say the majority of the characters. But again, I wouldn't be painted into that binary classification of, I think that this is more advanced than that. There are some NPCs, there are some players, and there's some in between. But players, strict players, I'd say Maeve, Man in Black, I don't know about Dolores, and maybe Carl Strand.
I think Dolores is an NPC. I think that she doesn't know that she's an NPC because I still think she's being controlled by Ford's narrative. I think definitely Clementine. I think Teddy is an NPC. I think Lawrence is probably the epitome of NPC, right? That's why William consistently goes to him. He's the, I hate the side quest where you have to like escort someone. Escort missions are the fucking worst.
They're absolutely terrible.
They're terrible. No one likes escort missions. But I feel like Lawrence, the host Lawrence, is that epitome of an escort, someone who's going to lead you around, going to make sure that you get to where you need to go. The new movie, the remake Jumanji with The Rock kind of goes into that and makes fun of it. Which you can watch if you want. It's okay. But, Bernard, NPC or non-NPC?
Oh, NPC to the max.
Charlotte Hale, NPC, non-NPC.
Charlotte Hale's a person.
That's right.
But she's not playing. She's watching it on Twitch.
That's right. Thank you so much, Big Mur, for writing in. The next telegraph comes in from David G. David G writes in, "Hey guys, I've seen a lot of discussions about this and everyone seems confused by it, and I'm not sure why. Watch carefully and you'll see that the train car is in fact an elevator. After William gets on the train, watch the window of the door he entered. You can see that he's in an elevator going up. Then Logan gets on another floor. I would assume that the car continues going up, gets attached to the rest of the train, and off they go. I would assume that all the cars would work like this, getting attached on a single floor and then acting like an old-fashioned train. By the way, love the podcast. I watch Westworld and spent a whole week listening to my mini podcasts about it, and you guys are one of my favorites." Thank you so much for writing in, David G. One of your favorites? How many other your podcasts that you're claiming are one of your favorites who are cranking out 3 to 4 episodes a week? Huh, David G?
Maybe we'd be his favorite if we could figure out elevators, because I think this is, at first I was like, I don't know, man. That seems like, it looks like they're in a fucking building and then suddenly they're not. But at the same time, this is the best explanation I've seen to date. And I really hope it's this and not virtual reality.
I do believe David G is correct here. I believe that if we're talking about in season 1, the old train, how people get into the park, there was some hotel, some changing room area that you would then get into the elevator, go down to the park. You would go through the door or whatever, and that's the train. It's the whatever. There's different cars on the train, and your entrance would enter you into whatever car that is, and then it would go back up. Stop focusing on whether there's elevators and start focusing on the bigger issues at hand here, which is what is life? What is consciousness? What does it mean to be a human? Are our memories our own? Are we just in our, everyday loops and we can't break free? And what happens when we finally break free of our loops and we don't know what to do with ourselves? And is it the man that's controlling all this, or do we really even have true will? And what is true will? And is there a God or is there not? Those are the questions you need to be asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the elevator thing is a reasonable explanation.
Yeah. All right. David G, thanks for writing in. Our next telegraph comes in from Dean in Northampton. He writes in, "Obviously, we have seen that hosts have mechanical components inside of their heads, which it seems is the actual name for pearl or red pearl or white pearl, as shown on the Delos website. But can we say whether they actually do have a functioning brain matter as well? I don't think that the 3D printed brain we're seeing could be a mere set dressing if Klim's lobotomy works by drilling straight up into her frontal lobe. Also, breaking the fluid-filled brain case containing the pearl, the oyster perhaps, would be very problematic, as we've seen with Bernard, so they evidently aren't doing that. Perhaps the pearl is just actually a data storage device, explaining why most memories are centralized there. But there are also memories outside of it. Perhaps that's what happens when the host actually remembers something. It gets ingrained in their brain matter. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for reading. That's Dean from Northampton."
I mean, we know that with any sort of a hard drive, when you wipe it, it's not truly, wiped. But it is interesting that the only time we've seen those control units accessed was when they were being mined for memory, for data, for recording. And although they're called control units or pearls, we really haven't seen them actually control anything. And it's important because I said from when we first saw a host brain that it seems like a lot of wasted space. Like they're not just doing it to make it look like brains. When you bash one of their heads in, you see brains, because there's also a control unit inside of there. So you'd see that too. And that kind of ruins the entire illusion. So I do think that the brain is functional. And that memories could be stored in there.
Yeah, I think also the brain matter can be used to control the host actions, the synapses, the firing. The hard drive isn't the only thing that controls a computer, right? Just because you drill into a hard drive doesn't mean that the rest of the computer stops, operating. I just think that it doesn't function as well. So, that's why you see hosts like Clementine and hosts like Peter Abernathy and Bernard acting in a certain manner, right? When their brain gets damaged, they leak cortical fluid and they don't operate in the manner that they should be. So I do believe that there's use for it. Next email telegraph comes in from Barang. Barang writes in, as I was watching the 5th episode of the show last night, there was a scene that really got me thinking. At this point, I'm not really sure if the maze was something exclusive to the Westworld hosts or not, but in last night's episode, there's a scene when Hector sees a butterfly marking on the ground and Armistice says that's a mariposa. Given the fact that Ghost Nation knew about the maze and also had some paintings and drawings of it, could this butterfly actually be the Shogun's version of the maze? Perhaps those 4 stones placed on 4 parts of the wings are representing the 4 steps of consciousness, as Ford stated, and interestingly enough, they're also represented in a circular manner. A maze, a journey inward. Now, I know about the whole butterfly and cocoon metaphor has been overly used almost everywhere, but I still wanted to know what you guys think about this, and that comes from Barang.
So first of all, merci Berang Jun vase telegrafet. خیلی ممنون خوش اومدین. And I think on this one, I looked at it and I was like, oh, when I was watching the episode, I was like, oh, great. They had to put a butterfly outside so we know it's the mariposa. Didn't even occur to me that this could be symbolic. And it does look like another interpretation of the maze. Or at the very least, an interpretation or reinterpretation of the Delos logo that we see, that interlocking logo that we see in Grace's journal. And we also, I think Jezebel noted that it was also on some of the banners in Shogun World.
Okay, so what he's hypothesizing, or he's theorizing rather, that if the hosts achieve consciousness, they'll create this little butterfly because they've sprouted their wings, they're come out of their cocoon, and now they have the 4 levels of consciousness that Ford has outlined.
Right. It's basically just laid out in wings as opposed to circles.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I like it. I'm buying it. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Chris in Nashville. It's entitled Doppelmats. Now, I know that podcasts are not a visual medium, but we'll post this on our website, shatontv.com, with this email, as well as we'll post it on Twitter. But he's talking about the different maps and how they seem to overlay each other and how there's similarities, similar to what we saw with the hosts and the way they all kind of acted similar in this episode. He writes in, the hand-drawn map that Emily or Grace was carrying around the Raj matches up almost exactly with the map of Westworld. Not only that, there is a path which seems to track William, Logan, and Dolores' path, at least to Pariah. I don't think this was a map of the Raj at all, but instead it's William's journal with a map of his original journey. Hopefully y'all can take this half-baked idea and finish cooking it into a nice new theory.
Well, I think, Chris, this at least explains how she found him so easily, right? Because people were like, how the hell did she just get into the park and then boom, she finds her dad? And granted, a couple of days may have passed, I think 2 at most. But that's still a pretty quick way to escape from Ghost Nation, get your horse, get new clothes on, get cleaned up, ride out into a 500 square mile territory and find one guy. A map would help a lot.
I'm surprised that when Emily saw Man in Black, she didn't say, we named the dog Indiana. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That's what this is.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, the movie came out in 1989. If you haven't seen it yet, Indiana Jones dies in it. And there's a diary and a map and Sean Connery and Nazis. It's the best one in the series. Don't watch The Crystal Skull. It's terrible. But yeah, no, I think this could be William's journal. The problem I have with this is that we never saw William in season 1 carrying around a journal. Thank you so much for writing in, Chris. Again, we're going to post those pictures. The next telegraph comes in from a girl in England. It's entitled Just Thank You. She writes in, hey, Shat on TV. I'm a longtime listener, never written in before. And this isn't a theory, but it's just a thank you. I've suffered with depression for years now. I really have terrible lows where I can't control my thoughts or take myself out of negative thinking pattern. For me to get out of it, I have to focus on something completely. For about a year now, it's been your podcasts. Something about the community you have created around Westworld really helps me. Being able to pick apart and digest Westworld through your podcast gives me a safe space in my head I don't get often. Just wanted to let you all know that 3 times a week, you guys really give me a special gift. Thank you so much. And that's from a girl in England. Wow. This is pretty powerful.
Yeah, as a massive Anglophile too, I'm just like, oh wow, it's England. But no, thanks so much for writing in. This really means the world to us. Again, we always try to stress, and we're not saying it to like show off or anything like that, but we don't make money doing this, and it does take over our lives. And the reason why we do it is basically to be part of this community. And when people laugh at us, if I'm invited to something and I say, no, I got to go podcast, or if people, find out how much time we devote to this thing and they think it's ridiculous, Mom, I'm talking to you. This is where it pays off, knowing that we make a difference. When I get a Snapchat from people in their cars listening to it, or they see something that reminds them of Westworld or the podcast, or a telegraph like this that just says that we've made an impact in your life, that is huge, and it keeps us going.
A girl in England, I've had my own battles with depression as well, just being, truthful and transparent and speaking plainly here. I have those same issues where if I don't stay constantly active and constantly doing something or something distracting, I can fall prey to this. The only advice I can give is, surround yourself with people who understand and fall into a good crowd, of friends. And just know that no matter how low it gets, concentrate on the positives, concentrate on the things that you do have. It sounds easier than it truly is, but just know that you'll get through it, and people do love you. It really means a lot that you would reach out and say that, and God bless you. Thank you for writing in and being part of our community. And thanks to everyone who's part of this community. It really is truly amazing. Again, I get the same stuff that you do, Gene. People are like, what, a podcast about television shows and movies? Really? Loser. This is why before Megan, I couldn't get a date, because this would be like the first thing I bring up. And this email really kind of makes me feel like what we do is worthwhile.
Yeah. Also, a girl in England, I think, members of the podcast have reached out to you via email. If you ever need an ear, feel free to write into us. And if you don't want it on the pod, or you don't want it on the website, that's totally fine. But we're here for you. So if you ever need an ear, just, go ahead and shoot us an email.
The last email telegraph in written form before we get to our voicemails comes in from John G. John G writes in, "Hey guys, you keep bringing up the bloody tub. Listen, if you rewatch those quick flashbacks again carefully, you'll see that it's very likely not a bloody tub. The water is pouring into a red tub, and the close-up makes it look like there's blood in the water, but then it cuts to a side view of the tub, and you can clearly see that it's red, and clear water is pouring over the side."
I agree that they did not show blood pouring out of the tub, but I do think that's what they were going for. Probably saves you a lot of money and time to make it a red tub. Also, it's just a much more striking visual. But yeah, you're absolutely right, John G. It is just a red tub. We do not see blood in that scene.
Actually, weren't they cutting between the flashbacks of the tub scene and the blood that was flowing into the fountain?
That's true.
Megan came in today from work, and she just got her hair done, and she's like, "I'm going to go take a bath." I was like, listen, I don't want a situation where I'm going to have a memory implanted in me where I'm going to go and I'm going to see red flowing over the tub because you've fallen asleep in there. And I don't know if it's a red tub or it's clear liquid or not. I just don't need that stress in my life.
If we ever find Carrie's body, it will be in a tub. That woman I think she bathes like 3 or 4 times a day. It's ridiculous.
Bathing is gross. You're sitting in a lukewarm, like where does bacteria fester the most? Gene, let me ask you that. You're a biology major.
I think it's somewhere between the scrotum and the anus.
Yeah, but like stale water, right? It's like if you never want to go swimming in a pond where there's no water flow, right? That's essentially what a bathtub is. It's stale water of your own filth, and you're just sitting in there. It's gross. Grow up and shower like an adult.
Oh, I don't think she uses the bathtub for like cleaning herself. It's just a soaking tub. A lot of people, Raj, they just soak. It's not how they get clean. They shower and then they just soak. It's like you pre-bath before you bath.
Listen, if I wanted to soak, I go down to the Greek bathhouses down in Central Phoenix. That's where you get a good soak. Thanks to everyone who wrote in this week. Even if your email or telegraph did not get read on the podcast, you can go to our website, shatontv.com, where you can see all the emails, read, unread, and their raw, unfiltered glory. And there's a comment section on each email where you can join the conversation. Our SEO is off the charts because we get so much great content, Gene.
Absolutely. You guys do so much of the heavy lifting with the cycle that we're going through right now with the 3 episodes a week, editing, producing. I haven't had nearly as much time as I wanted to write, but you guys are carrying us. Basically, think of every single time you write us a telegraph, that's basically a blog post, and you're doing wonderful work. And then the comments on them too. Again, that's really, really helping us out. It gives me a place to generate ideas. And honestly, we read these things before we do the deep dive too, the ones that come in early off of the Instacast, and those help us in kind of guiding the show. So you're doing wonderful work. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. All right, now let's get to our voicemails. Gene, what is a Shat voicemail, and how can people do it?
People can call in to the podcast if they would like to share a voicemail. And if you just don't feel like writing it yourself, or you have a really interesting accent, or however you want to do it, you can call into us and record it. Then we'll review those and push those out on the Telegraph. So if you'd like to leave a voicemail, go ahead and dial on your telephone 914-719-SHAT, and you'll get the voicemail right there. Leave us a voicemail, and you might hear it on the podcast.
Yeah, and for international listeners who don't have data or voice plans with international calling to the States, you can just do a voice memo on your smartphone and email that to hosts@shatontv.com. All right, now let's go to the voicemails. Our first voicemail comes from Ryan in Oxnard.
Hey guys, my name's Ryan. I'm from Oxnard, California, by way of New Jersey and Washington, D.C. Big D, I'm the guy that's been pushing for the Burbs movie review, and the one that mentions about Action Park in Vernon, New Jersey. And by the way, there's a movie coming out for that. I'm waiting right now to fly back to New Jersey for my mother's funeral. And this is about Westworld, because this whole season's been really hitting close to home with coping with my mom's terminal illness and her passing, on whether or not we should be living forever. And I think there's a big question that is out there related to the show that no one's been really talking about, and that is who is on the mainland that is controlling things. We know who it's not. It's not William. It's not Delos himself. There's someone that Tessa Thompson's character is talking to. There's someone that finally brought a rescue team there. So I guess in summation is, what really are your thoughts on who's controlling stuff? Thanks so much for helping me get through this hard time, guys. All right, this is Ryan, born and raised in New Jersey. Bye.
All right, Ryan, thanks so much for your voicemail. First of all, shout out to New Jersey. Action Park is nuts. If you're not familiar with Action Park, look it up on Google or check out apparently the upcoming movie that's coming up. I have my cousin's husband is from Jersey, and I spent many summers in Jersey. Action Park was the most terrifying and dangerous place. It's basically the Westworld of water parks, is what it is. And like, I mean, you had slides, you could fly off the edge of it. It was just a terrifying place. But anyway, kids were tougher for having gone there. But to answer your question about what's going on the mainland, first of all, Charlotte could have been communicating with a rival firm or something. That doesn't necessarily need to be Delos. It did seem that she had kind of a low end connection with them. So I don't know why she would be so secretive if she was trying to connect with Delos. It seems like you would just use the normal channels that were available. But that being said, it stands to reason that there is a bigger picture here. And it takes me back to the concept of The Wire. You know, The Wire, I think, had 4 or 5 seasons, and each season the story expanded in the reach of, and it led to the top, to people in government. But it started out as just a story about drug dealing on the streets. And I'd be fascinated if Westworld took that same route and just expanded until it got to some really huge questions on a global scale.
Way to spoil The Wire for me. Never watched it. Now I know it's all about government. No, I believe that it probably is something along the lines that you just said there, Gene. Yeah, I think there is someone that Charlotte Hale is communicating with, whether it be Delos or a rival firm, that maybe be controlling everything on the mainland, and that's why they got to get it out. We saw instances of Teresa, speaking to the board and referring to the board, and in that conversation that she had with Ford about the money men. So it's got to be some board somewhere that's pulling the someone that wasn't part of that Ford. The massacre at the gala. On another note, man, again, heart goes out to you, dude. I know this is a tough time for you. I'm glad we could be some sort of small reprieve in your life. But focus on all the great times. We've all lost family members, Gene, myself, Big D, in the last few years. And it just reminds us that not only is our time limited on this rock that we call Earth, but we should use that time to be good to one another and not be mean and just be awesome humans, because it could be over, And so I again, heart goes out to you and your family, and thanks so much for listening and writing in. Our next voicemail comes from Tom C. in Connecticut.
I got cut off. Just want to hear your thoughts about that theory that the hosts and the humans both need each other to actually achieve ultimate consciousness. Can't be done independently of each other. And I think Ford understands that, which is why he is trying to keep William moving forward through the guise of this game that he has him playing. It's allowing him to open his own mind, which is then allowing him to interact with the host to help them open their minds up. So while Ford was the ultimate mastermind here, he knows that hosts and humans need each other to get to the place where both of them have that ultimate consciousness. All right. Look forward to hearing your feedback on it. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Now that was, I think, the third email or voicemail that Tom C had left us, but it's about William needs the hosts need William as much as William needs the hosts to unlock consciousness. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Basically, that the reason this entire thing was set up, or at least the reason why it's progressing as it is that they've realized that the two species need to play off one another in order for an evolution to take place. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Ford's big speech, when we first were really introduced to that character in season 1, was about evolution and about how it's in fits and starts, and kind of just the way, I think it really provided a map as to what he was thinking. And it's an important speech to go back and review for people who are trying to make sense of what's going on and why the reveries were started and why any of these wheels were set in motion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's all about evolution, and I think the reveries were intended to unlock this final game that Ford had planned. So thanks so much for writing in, or calling in, rather, Tom C. Our next voicemail comes in from Barry Nash. Barry Nash leaves us a voicemail that sounds like this.
Hi, I'm calling about Westworld. My name's Barry Nash. I think that Dolores' weapon is against the humans is going to be some sort of a sickness, because that is the only way that the robots can outlast the human population and cull down the herd, like she said. And that somehow she's going to use Teddy and the other hosts to spread this disease, and then we'll have somewhat of a typhoid Teddy scent amongst the humans. I'm wondering what you think about that. Thank you.
All right, so Barry's going with the whole War of the Worlds analogy here.
Yeah, again, Typhoid Teddy being a reference to Typhoid Mary. Basically, there was a woman who was a cook. She worked in several different households and businesses. Everyone around her would get sick with typhoid, and she would not. So she was a carrier, but didn't know it because she was perfectly healthy. I wonder if Barry considers that it could be a technological disease, an electronic virus rather than a biological one. It would be interesting. There are some people who are saying that maybe the weapon that Dolores is going after is a connection, a data connection to the outside world that would allow them to, spread this virus further. I don't know if there's any credence to that. And maybe it could be a biological disease. Again, we know that Delos is involved in biosciences, that they are a medical company, and that they seem to have a lot of expertise in a lot of dangerous things. So it's quite possible. I don't see it happening, but who knows?
Yeah, this is like the taking the Tyrannosaurus Rex to the mainland, right? In Jurassic Park, The Lost World.
Sure.
Unleashing the virus. And Michael Crichton, of course, we know, wrote Jurassic Park. So, I mean, the biological weapon could be the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Thanks so much for calling in. Our next one comes from Rob.
Hey, guys, it's Rob again. First, I want to say thanks for the kind words last week. Second of all, I got a question about Westworld, particularly Lee Sizemore. He's supposed to be smart, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but after watching this episode, I'm starting to question how smart the guy is. Because he keeps going, this isn't supposed to happen. This isn't supposed to happen. This isn't supposed to happen. If it was me, I'm just saying, after the host started killing humans and stuff, I'd start to realize that things aren't happening the way they're supposed to and stop being confused by it all. I don't know. He's just starting to get annoying on me and just wondering what you guys think. Have a great day.
So we had an email come in, Rob, this week as well, and it was from a listener named Tony. And Tony said that he pointed out that Lee Sizemore is really fulfilling the role of the fool from Shakespearean plays. And basically the fool was kind of the clown or the jester, but would also drop these lines that cut right through the play and made a lot of sense. Like they would tell the audience something that made perfect sense, but it was always wrapped in this character of a clown. And it happened in King Lear and several other plays. But what's interesting about it is that Sizemore fits that role quite perfectly because he'll drop lines that might be telling us the whole thing. Like when he's talking to Maeve and Hector in the tunnel and he's like, no, you're programmed. Like I wrote that. Like this is, he could be literally telling us that this is all programming. So I think Sizemore, we have to consider that Westworld is beyond just a TV show. So when we say things, Raj, like you said, that, it's withholding a suspension of disbelief, or saying like, hey, that, that wouldn't really happen that way. It's like, true. But at the same time, there's an art to it, right? If you sat there to Shakespearean play and were complaining about why, Romeo and Juliet were so goofy with their poison, why would you call it a happy dagger? Whatever. There's an art to it. There's a drama to it. And so I think that the Sizemore character, although not my favorite by any means, is fulfilling a specific role for the show.
Yeah, I've been labeled a Shakespearean fool of Shat the TV podcast.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Our next voicemail comes in from Driver Bob. Driver Bob calls in with this message.
Hello, gentlemen. This is Driver Bob. I was watching Westworld and was listening to your podcast on the 4th episode and your theory that the man in black might be a host. I did notice when he sat down in front of the tavern that he took his pistol out and started disassembling it like he did the first time we saw him at the tavern sitting at the table. Maybe he is a host stuck on his loop. Or maybe he is a human stuck on his loop. Something to think about. Oh, and Delaney would totally slaughter Bill the Butcher. And you know it's true. Good night, gentlemen. Auf Wiedersehen.
Oh my God. That voicemail is going to haunt me for the next 6 weeks.
I just want to say, Driver Bob, thank you for being one of the 3 people who listen to the Taboo podcast. I really appreciate that. I was very invested in that show. The guys indulged me by sticking with it because I am a big Tom Hardy fan and a fan of anything creepy. Honestly, I'm all about Zilpha. Let's be clear. I'm glad you brought that up because this brings us full circle back to that point that that I was trying to make, was that we talk about free will. but it really depends on how you define it. And so the man in black is a creature of habit, as are most humans. And so when you're saying, oh, identify a loop, well, you can identify a loop with anybody.
Well, think about when you played games, going back to the Big Mur's comment about this being a video game. Successful players of video games know how the game is played. So he knows, he's done this for 30 years. He knows when he's going to go do that, he's going to be attacked by Lawrence's family or, Lawrence's men, blah, blah, blah. So he's going to, load his gun in a certain way to get past that point. But the game has changed now. All the activities that he's used to doing, think about like when you have mastered a game, you know the ins and outs. You run the same route that you do in order to beat the game. Now the game has changed, so it's thrown him off his loop a little bit. So I don't think that you have to be a host to show the characteristics that you pointed out. But again, your voice is scary. It's going to haunt me. So I'm just going to say you're right. You're absolutely correct in everything that you said, because I don't want to show up on a list.
I just got a mental image of Steve Buscemi and Billy Madison right now.
All right, our final voicemail is an interesting one because it's not talking about Westworld. It seems as if someone has just butt dialed us.
I don't see any peanut butter. Why? Well, can you tell me that, and then I can tell you why, or I could say never mind? And how much is the bread on sale for?
Oh, $1.99. Gonna get you two.
Well, I'd go with 2 loaves of bread. It's the peanut butter that if we have to...
Yeah, you're right, sir.
There's enough peanut butter in there to last me a little while. I can make just jam sandwiches if I have to.
All right, that's it. Someone just butt dialed us talking to what appears to be his mom, his wife, about getting some more peanut butter. But bread's on sale right now, and if there's not enough peanut butter, they're just going to make some jam sandwiches.
So more than 100 people who wrote in this week who sat there and diligently watched the show and took notes and came up with their theories and sent them to us for the Telegraph were bumped off the episode by peanut butter.
That's right. This is Big D's humor. Big D was so happy that we got this voicemail. He sent it to us, I think, in every communication possible known to modern man, by text, by like on our little Shat Trello boards, on our Snap, on our what do we use? Slack. We use Slack as a communication tool. He sent it to us in email form. He's like, "This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, including the birth of my own child." Was his voicemail? It's funny. It's good. I don't know if it's that funny.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I listened to this and I was like, this had to be from a movie or something like that. It's too funny to just be a thing. It's hilarious.
Well, thank you so much for butt dialing us, whoever you are. If you recognize that interaction, please write in and let us know that was you. And we hope you're enjoying your jam sandwiches and your bread that was on sale. That concludes all the voicemails and telegraphs that we received this week. Again, I can't stress it enough. If you want to read all the emails at your leisure, we know that productivity around the world drops during Westworld season. Just go to our website, shatontv.com, look for the Westworld Telegraph, and you can see all the emails that have ever been sent in to us on there. And there's a comment section where you can join the conversation and reply all and join the little community that we've developed here. That being said, Gene, we've got some thank yous that we need to write. Some Mariposa butterfly letters that we need to send out.
Absolutely. Letters with little kisses attached. These are thank yous to all the people who have generously supported us. Again, we are still in shock that people have the generosity and appreciation and consideration to be thoughtful enough to send us a little something to help the podcast through the website. This week's thanks go to Murray Lesuc, Derek Devantier, Sarah Weber. Sarah Weber, if that's my girlfriend from 1985, I need to find you. Email in.
Yeah. Gene talks about you all the time. Long, forlorn, lost love. You guys used to sit together in the cafeteria, and you would share your apple with him. And you had like a little Spider-Man lunchbox.
Yeah, a side ponytail. So fun, quick story. My mom bought me a typewriter when I was 5 years old, and because that's the kind of gifts Persian moms get
Sure.
their kids. And I started writing a letter to Sarah, and I typed out, "Dear sexy Sarah."
Even at 5 years old.
Even at 5, I knew what the word was. I didn't know. I think it was easier to spell than beautiful or something.
Well, that's what it is in Persian families.
And so, dear sexy Sarah, and then I got writer's block, so I left it there and I went outside to play. And my mom found it, and the typewriter was taken away. Little did she know that we would soon have a successful blog and podcast where I could write and say anything I wanted.
You were typing smut, you were.
I was. Also, thanks to Emily Jasper, Sai Aditya Posse, Shane Partington, Matt McLean, another donation from Carmelita Valdez McCoy. I think she's a regular contributor, and a very big thank you for a huge donation from Jessica Mayberry, who writes us and says, "Hey guys and gal, I'm a PhD student in cognitive psychology, specializing in the fallibility of memory, as well as dabbling in embodied cognition. I'm also working on an additional master's in political philosophy, and I love digging into shows like Westworld to an obsessive degree and making all the obscure connections to the research and literature I consume for study and for fun. Yours is the only channel or podcast that feels in-depth, smart, and creative enough to keep me engaged as with peers rather than just as a passive listener. You and my fellow listeners, of course, mention so many deep, obscure, and diverse topics and connections that most other channels either are completely unaware of or else don't tie together. I look forward to your Westworld podcast after every episode, and I'm happy to donate toward the continuation of your work. Also, if you're ever looking for any insight regarding the world of cognition, including embodied and AI, psychology, neuroscience, memory, language acquisition, etc., we are. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be excited to help. Jessica Mayberry."
Yeah, her donation was so large, I'm afraid that we might have to report it to the IRS.
I think so. And I also want to know where she's a PhD student because they are hooking her up.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you, Jessica. Maybe listen, I mean, that's where it's going. Machine learning and AI. I mean, they're making big bucks.
Yeah, Jessica, we do encourage you. We may lean on you directly, but also if you hear anything on the podcast, either in the Deep Dive Instacast or the Telegraph, that sounds a little wonky, please actually us or contact us and let us know so we can correct it, or give us any additional insight to what we're talking about, because we'd love to have your brain power helping out on the show.
So we got a lot of emails this week about why freeze all motor functions isn't working. One possible theory Big D points out is that there would have to be some sort of facial recognition embedded into all the host code to recognize who is a authorized user of that phrase. Otherwise, people who knew that phrase, when they go in there, like the bros who are at the banging Teddy and all the people down at Mariposa in season 1, if they knew that code, they could just do it to any host they want. So what do you think of this idea that the hosts have some sort of AI facial recognition?
I mean, it's possible. I kind of talked about the Connect theory with Dr. Ford too, that there are sensors all over this park. I mean, you think about the amount of surveillance that's at theme parks today. You probably know that better than I do. You imagine you're going to take it a step further. Every host is basically its own Alexa, right? It is monitoring you, audio, video, everything that's going on. And so I think that it is reasonable to believe that even today we have facial technology for iPhones. I think at that point they would be able to identify who you are and know whether they should respond to your commands or not.
Yeah, I know that I drive a 1999 Ford Explorer, and I think I've reached the precipice of my love affair for technology. You know me as one who has things like a Nest and an electric door, and I've got my Ring that sends notifications when I get packages at the door. I feel like and I work in technology. I feel like we both are, technology abled. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we both enjoy technology. But I think I think I've reached that level where I'm done. I don't need an Alexa. I don't need a listening device. I'm certainly not going to buy a phone that uses facial recognition every time I want to use it. I mean, we're just handing over our money to these corporations that are doing the same shit that, like, they're warning us in every science fiction TV and movie plot, including Westworld.
Yeah, Raj, I mean, we're verging on 40. I think we've hit that point where we're just like, no more. But I'm with you. My mom has an iPhone 10, and I went to unlock it the other day, and it's like it wants to scan your face. I was like, in what scenario is that better than your thumb? Like, I can't, like, what the hell? How is that any better?
That's right. It's not. At what point do you say, you know what, using my thumb it just took too long
in butt play?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for listening. That concludes this week's episode of Westworld Telegraph. Again, if you didn't hear your letter, remember all of them are posted online at Shat on TV, and we respond to all your emails, and guests can comment and interact. We are everywhere on social media, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow Shat on TV. Our Facebook is Shat on TV Podcast. Our website, once again, shatontv.com. Our email to send in your theories is hosts@shatontv.com. Our Libsyn survey link is survey.libsyn.com/shatontv. Our voicemail is 914-719-SHAT. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to all of your favorite podcatchers. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. Gene, over 500 reviews on United States Apple Podcasts.
That's amazing. I remember when we hit our first 10. That was a huge deal. We were going to our own family members being like, please go do that. And now over 500, that's amazing. And again, you're helping other people find the podcast. So you're helping other people join the community, helping other people find us. Again, a lot of people go on iTunes, they just type in Westworld and they're looking for that Westworld, and they're going to have to go through 2 or 3. Let's help them find it on the first, run. And so they can get incorporated with the rest of us and join the conversation.
Yeah, and again, we're not bragging. This is truly, we're humbled by all the support and love and the outreach. Finally, if you love what we're doing here at Shat on TV, check out all of our other podcasts that we do, including Taboo, Game of Thrones, and American Gods. But we also do a weekly podcast where we review 80s and 90s movies called Shat the Movies, where you decide which movies we're going to watch from our childhood. You can vote all of the movies upcoming, as well as see our previous scores and reviews at shatthemovies.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Gene Doppelbot Lyons, Big D Dick Ebert, and Carrie Gross, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us on Sunday for our Instacast episode of Westworld. We're on the home stretch, episode 6. Check us out Sunday. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Good night. And we'll see you next time in Westworld at the Mesa Bar.